Welcome to October, Zach's Corner, where we review highlights and insights with Associate Professor of Colorado State University Supply Chain Management, Zach Rogers. Again, it wouldn't be Zach's Corner without Zach. And I guess this wouldn't happen without me too. John Graham, BM2 Freight. All kinds of fun stuff going on. Can I say that we can make some bold predictions? Well, I guess we'll find out at the end of the conclusion today. But having said so much, let's jump right into LMI, Logistics Managers Index, for a basis of our conversation. The idea is to highlight all the, data and analysis in a more formalized discussion. All right, Mr. Zach, how are we looking out there in the supply chain, transportation, logistics world?
Oh, we're looking at a lot of stuff, actually. It's good, though. It's funny. I want to throw this up before we get to the actual numbers. There's a lot of focus on, supply chains and, supply chains are broken, right? Supply chains are sick. They're not doing well. And it's funny, I think, to look at just how mainstream this has got. This is a number I pulled off the Wall Street Journal, number of the day last week. And there was a 412% increase in mentions of supply chain in Q3 earnings calls by Fortune 500 companies. They all pretty much just happened. And that is on top of the 123% growth in the second quarter in these earnings calls for the Fortune 500. And so everyone is seemingly thinking about it. I mean, local news is having stuff about supply chains. Morning news guys, normally they're like, look at cute kids in Halloween costumes and a dog doing something and what's traffic like today. But everyone now is talking about supply chains. And so I think it's good for all of us, CSCMP, DTC, wherever, ISM, whoever's watching this today, it's just supply chain professionals. What we're doing really matters right now. And it matters kind of more than it ever has. So let's get to the numbers with that as the preamble. So to remind everybody, Logistics Managers Index is a monthly change index, okay? So we go to a bunch of sort of high-level directors and say, okay, inventory levels staying the same, going down, going up. And we ask the same thing for inventory costs, warehousing and transportation capacity, utilization, and price. And then we just say, okay, month to month, how did this change? Do we have more transportation available from last month, or do we have less? By the way, just spoiler alert, the answer for the last year and a half has been there's less transportation available. And so it's pretty robust, 58,000 responses in the 5 years we've been doing this. And you can see here that we're at a 72.6 in October 21. And that's up slightly from the growth rate in September of 72.2. And really, though, what matters is through the first 10 months of the year, this is the fastest rate of growth we've ever seen from a January through October. And I think it's interesting, by the way, we class, so anything over 50 that you see here means growth. Further over 50 it is, the greater the rate of growth. Further under 50 it is, the greater the rate of contraction, okay? So 50 and under, is contraction. Anything over means growth. So if we look at the last year, we've been at what we would call a significant rate of growth, which is any number over 70, a significant rate of growth since February. So the last 9 months. And if we go back even further to September of last year, so add 5 months onto there, we've been there for 12 of the last 14 months at a rate of 70 or more. And really, the only reason we weren't at 70 all the way through is because we burned off a lot of inventories in December and then January because of Q4 sales. So we've been at this really, really high rate of growth and expansion in supply chains. Well, what has that done for us? Well, we start getting...
That's a loaded question right there.
we start getting articles like this coming out. Oh, hey, not going to be Christmas trees. There was a bunch of problems with Halloween costumes. My wife ordered a Halloween costume in September, like September 20th or something, and paid the rush order on it, paid an extra $40 on it. And I think it got to my house like last Tuesday, so November 2nd, which is, not really when you want a Halloween costume showing up. And so we have problems all over the place. And okay, there's toys are going to be slow to get here, Christmas trees, Halloween costumes. Here's where I think we really need to draw the line though, and how you really know this has gotten serious. This is a picture from a Dunkin' Donuts in I think Maine, and they said, we apologize, but due to supply chain issues, we don't have donuts today. Dunkin' Donuts is out of donuts. Why even open the store if they don't have donuts? It does say underneath, please try our wonderful bagels and muffins, which I don't know if that's a joke or what some sort of sick prank. But we're out of donuts, we're out of Christmas trees, we're out of toys, and everyone's trying to figure out why this is happening. Well, there's some obvious causes, right? There's the stuff like this. All the boats sitting outside the San Pedro Bay. Last I looked, there was 109. You know, John, I think when we did this a couple months ago, we said, oh my gosh, there's more than 70 boats on the San Pedro Bay. This is crazy because, you know, there shouldn't be any out there, really. And now we're all the way up to like 109, 110. And on a 30-day moving average, they're sitting out there for 13.4 days, just sitting at anchorage, not moving, nothing's going on. So people see these and they think, supply chain, it's broken. Something's wrong. This used to work great before. What are you doing? It's your fault. What's going on, supply chains? And here's the real answer here. Here's what's going on. This is a graphic showing the metric tons of waterborne imports coming into the U.S. So containerized imports. This is the weight. That black line is 2020. The red line is 2021. Look how much higher. Look how much more weight is coming in through the ports every single month of 2021 relative to the last 3 years. You know, even and remember last fall we thought, oh man, the ports have gotten really busy when we were over here. Remember October, September? September was the all-time when it happened. September and October were the all-time records for imports to the Port of Los Angeles. And now those look like nothing. Those look like peanuts, what we're seeing right now. And
Hey,
so,
Zach, real quick, you know,
Yeah.
just from that, you know, that the bullwhip concept, right?
Yeah.
Do you see this as a recoil front end bullwhip?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no. So there will be a bullwhip effect here, and for those of you who remember the beer game from school, the bullwhip basically says, okay, small changes downstream are going to lead to big ones upstream, and so we have actually huge orders coming in. And one of the things that's going on, John, is that people are worried that there's not going to be enough product on the shelf for Q4 for the holiday shopping season. You know, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all that stuff's right around the corner.
If it's not on the shelf, you can't sell it, right? I mean,
Exactly. And so it's like take a company like Best Buy. Best Buy did huge forward buys to try to build up their inventory early. So they essentially tried to get everything they would need for the rest of the year here by August, because they knew that the ships coming across the ocean, we can't do JIT right now. That's unreliable. And so if you're like, well, I don't know when the next ship is going to come in, I'll just order everything I need now, which is further, by the way, hurting supply chains, because now everyone is ordering way more than they need to, which overloads everything. I mean, you look at Walmart, Target, Costco, they all just chartered their own ships because they're like, look, we still can't control how fast we get through the ports. We still can't control freight. We still can't really control, you know, how many intermodal cars are available, but at least we can make sure everything gets on a boat and starts to come across the water. And so I do think you're going to see that we just have tons and tons of inventory. Now, that might not matter as much as it would in a normal time, because this is going to be a huge shopping season. You know, the economy is growing. People have money in their pockets. And because of issues surrounding COVID, people are tending to spend more money on goods than services. Okay. So there's less people getting on airplanes to go see grandma, or taking a trip to Hawaii or whatever fun things it is you might be doing. So instead they're like, well, I'll buy some more shoes or buy a bigger TV to watch the Super Bowl or something. And so, you know, yes, we are. I think this does look like what the beginning of the bullwhip can be. but I don't know if it will be quite as pronounced as we would expect, given the sort of abnormal rate of consumer demand that's going on.
Yeah, and I just kind of go back to the CSEP, certification, where Bullock really kind of talks about your upwards, or your suppliers. So the suppliers in Asia, right? They got tapped early with, right, their peak orders ahead of time. So I kind of like think to myself, like, okay, what had to happen in order for those factories to get back online and have the raw materials and the
Yeah.
capacity to meet those demands, right, early, right? I mean, and we were talking about this in previous episodes, where we, there was issues at the factory level, where, or even, obviously supply, raw materials, depending on raw materials, what that is, can, obviously affect the amount of, capacity there. So all those things kind of come together, for whatever widget it may be coming across. But a lot of different factors, but it's amazing to see that kind of volume, even with the constraints with the, overseas suppliers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And some of them, because of the strict COVID stuff over there, were shut down for weeks and weeks and weeks. Nike said they missed 10 weeks of production because of shutdowns in Vietnam. I think we sometimes forget, being in the US, that the vaccine's not just everywhere. Here the question is like, well, should I take it or not? In a lot of other places, it's, are there vaccines anywhere? The rate of vaccination in a place like Vietnam is close to 10%. And so in many ways, they're still living, basically in 2020 in many ways, because of, you can't really stop it from happening. And so a lot of those places are taking really hardcore stances. The Yancheng port got shut down because one person got it, and they shut the thing down. China, they locked 30,000 people in Shanghai Disney last week because two people had it. And so things are still not operating quite normally over there. And that's actually a great setup. That brings me to my next slide. So people tend to focus on the ports because it's easy to see what's going on with the ports. And really, there's a lot more underlying. Okay, so there's multiple bottlenecks inside the supply chain. The first one is the one we were just talking about: factories. So factories in Asia, Central America, even some in the US, wherever it is, maybe they're not running at full capacity. And a lot of that has to do with COVID. A lot of it also has to do to not being able to source components. So, raw materials, semiconductors, rare earth metals, all kinds of stuff, right? We got components backed up. Okay, so that's one bottleneck. The next bottleneck, the one that's obvious that anyone in Southern California can look over there and see, is all the ships that are sitting there. So the ports have gotten very, very slow, mostly because of the level of volume that's coming through. Because the ships are slow, that means it's also really hard to get containers. The price of a container right now is $18,000 going from China to the West Coast of the United States. 2 years ago at this time, I think it was about $1,500, which is about where it should be. And now it's $18,000. Okay, so it's more than 10 times more expensive just for the box that we're going to ship everything on. And by the way, the backups everywhere are making there be less containers. Okay, so let's say you're a ship coming from China to the US. Well, that's where you make the real money, is going across from China to the US. Do I have any reason to sit around and take empty containers back, to delay my voyage back for another day or 2 days so you can load up empty containers that aren't going to do anything for me? No. I'm just going to put whatever you can on. I'm going back. I already waited for more than 2 weeks just at anchor to unload the last load. So I'm going back. And what that does is it means that ships are coming back to China with a lot less containers. A lot of them now are coming back with 75% of the containers that they went west with. And so we don't have as many containers on the China side, which then again exacerbates the problem. A lot of these containers are unavailable because they're sitting on chassis. Chassis, to move stuff across the dock. But chassis are also a bottleneck because we can't get containers off the chassis because we don't have anywhere to put them. Because warehouses have become a bottleneck. We don't have any warehouse capacity. and we can't unload the warehouses because we don't have enough capacity on rail cars and intermodal cars, and we don't have enough capacity on trucks. And so there's multiple bottlenecks all the way throughout the supply chain. And so that's why you say, okay, well, the Biden administration says, let's go 24/7 in Long Beach. Okay, great idea in theory, but what's that going to do? All right, we smashed one bottleneck. That opens up. And everything runs into 5 more bottlenecks after that. I think I've said this to you before, but opening the ports 24/7 is like rushing through a red light, and then you get to 5 more red lights right after it. So even if we eliminate some of the bottlenecks, we're still going to have more to deal with in the supply chain. And to give you an idea of what those bottlenecks are like, let me show you this picture. So we talked about the obvious cause. The obvious cause is, okay, all the ships are sitting in the San Pedro Bay. Here's the real cause, though. Here's the underlying cause underneath, and it's this pink line. That pink line is aggregate logistics capacity. So all of our capacity measures sort of put together. The green line is all of our price measures put together. Anything under that dashed black line is contracting. Anything over the dashed black line is growth. So let's look at what's happened. So 2 years ago, at this time, 2 years ago in October, capacity was actually growing faster than price. Capacity was at 184. Price was at 175. And then let me see. Let's see if we can figure out when COVID happened. Oh, was it right here? And so suddenly things spike. Okay, we get sort of negative capacity for a second. And then it's funny, we had this little period in May and April where kind of nothing was moving. This was the learn how to make bread, watch Tiger King sort of period. And then since then, it's just a tale of 2 different metrics. You know, we've had tons of costs above 250. And remember, this scale goes from 0 to 300 here. Okay, so anything over 250 is really significant levels of growth. And we've been up over 250 for almost the entire year. We're at 262 right now. Meanwhile,
if we're trying to hypothesize when we get back to a more balanced market, I mean, this would be a good, kind of graph to start to notice when trending kind of comes down, right? Like as it's kind of squeezed.
This would help. Yeah, this would help. I mean, really though, and here's the thing about this is it doesn't matter that much the movements down here. Okay, so you can see, all right, it's at 122.5. It was a little higher in September. It was a little lower in July. That doesn't really matter. Like, because you might look at this and be like, oh, look, it's, we're higher than we were last time at this year. Okay, if you look at September and October. But the thing to remember is these are not absolute levels. This is rate of change. And so we're still lower. There's less capacity now than there was a year ago. Anything under black means contraction. All this is the slopes, okay? Yeah. So we're still going downhill in October 21 from October 2020. Maybe just the slope isn't quite as negative. Okay, that's all that means. It's going to be quite a while before we see these 2 things kind of come back around. And there's a couple reasons for that. Okay, I will say though, if we look at these last 2 years, it's been a 150-point swing. Okay, 150-point swing in 2 years. And again, this only goes up to 300. So 150-point swing on a 300-point graph is pretty huge.
So no opportunity for people to operating in between there to really scale. It just kind of here's what it is.
Exactly.
Today.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny.
And we're bringing stuff on. Like we're bringing trucks on. We're bringing warehouses on. It's just that the new supply can't keep up with the new demand.
I'm changing my title to Supply Chain Bottleneck High Hurdle Champion. Do you think that gets some hits?
Oh yeah, no, that'll be big on LinkedIn, I think. And the places people are having problems change depending on where you look. We break our report up into upstream and downstream firms. Okay, so downstream would be like retailers, customer-facing groups. Upstream would be like manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, people like that. And if we look at transportation capacity, downstream firms have 11.5 point faster rate of contraction than upstream. Okay, so I mean 38.9 for the upstream firms, that's still really significant contraction, but a 27.3 is really, really serious contraction. And so that means it's really hard to find a truck to do both the last mile and the middle mile. Okay, so to deliver something to consumers, and we know we've talked on this show a bunch of times before that e-commerce went up by 3 years in 1 year last year. So we kind of understand why that's happening. We also, as we saw a minute ago, consumers are spending way more money. But also it's difficult for us to get, it's really difficult for us to get stuff moved from, say, a supplier warehouse or a dock or wherever to a fulfillment center or to a retailer distribution center because there's no transportation capacity. As you would expect, that means their transportation prices are also significantly higher, 8.2 points higher. And so we're seeing a bigger charge, bigger rate of growth anyway, from moving stuff around on that downstream customer facing environment. Okay, it's not easy to move stuff around anywhere, but it's even more pronounced downstream because of that consumer demand, and also because a lot of the trucks are stuck upstream, like we said, up at the ports, up with all the bottlenecks.
Yeah, it's still a bottleneck, right? I mean, if a truck is full and utilization is 101%, right? I mean, there's just no empty space, right? So the order's there, the inventory is there, but again, let's use the word bottleneck, right? You're still, maybe you solved all those bottlenecks from your suppliers overseas and your warehousing and inventory. You solved all those problems, and you still can't get a truck to move it, 500 to 1,000 miles efficiently. Where, historically that wasn't really always an issue, and people are tapping into spot market, to basically auction their load for, to get it moved. We always had this saying in truckload brokerage that there's no such thing as bad freight, just bad rates, right? And not really helping the cost of transportation, there, because there are a indeterminate amount of suppliers that are just servicing spot freight, right? Historically, and I just came out with some marketing material called "The Death of the Backhaul," where we basically say, historically, I don't know if anybody remembers a company called American Backhaulers. Great name then, probably not so good now, right? Because we know what we're doing. We're going to the spot market, which, again, this isn't holistically, just kind of just an observation or something we've seen over the last year or so, and it relates to the high spiking spot quotes. But the combination of high volume, right, and high demand, in the spot market is a perfect formula for carriers to obviously be profitable, not necessarily recoup costs, and repositioning their equipment, either the driver back to his home origin, or the equipment needs to go back through their home, to pick up a preloaded trailer or maintenance, or all those things that trucking companies need to operate in their specific models. And I don't think that's exclusive to all carriers out there, but definitely your larger kind of your 70 and up carrier operators. And I think we even saw a trending at the CMCP Edge, or presenters showed that there is an uptick in the amount of 1 to 5 carrier operators. And this is kind of funny. I drove to Nebraska this weekend for pheasant hunting, which I normally do, and I saw we got cut off by a driver with a leased Penske truck towing an Amazon trailer. And I'm like, see, look at that, right? 900 people drive by there, not really see the underlining there. What I'm seeing is someone leased a piece of equipment using someone else's trailer to haul freight, right? All of a sudden, that's like, I mean, how much overhead does this driver really have? And, and obviously whoever's hiring this driver, are you doing the right things? Are you making sure he has insurance? Is that DOT on the side of his truck? Is that legitimate, right? And all the other things that you need to do to mitigate risk within your, transportation network. But it really kind of opened your eyes. And Zach, man, I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen the truck stops fuller. I've never seen more trucks on the road. So, I mean, if the eyes don't deceive you at the 101% utilization, take a trip across I-80 in Nebraska. And, it's the other things I noticed too. Trailers dropped in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'm like, oh, that's bad, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that's either theft or a driver quit or something that's not supposed to be there by itself randomly. So next time I probably should just be a good Samaritan, take a photo of like the key markings on that piece of equipment and post it somewhere just so like people can find their stuff, right? But anyway, just adding a little color from the truckload. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about you talking about the backhauls is my next slide here actually has to do a little bit with that. So we're on the same page today, man. This picture is I got from my buddy Zach Strickland at FreightWaves. FreightWaves, by the way, if you want analytics for anything, any and all things with transportation logistics markets, that no one's doing it better than them right now. This picture here is the last couple years about the Drivein rates going from LA to Dallas and then from Dallas back to LA. Okay, so the blue line is the cost of leaving Los Angeles to go to Dallas. Green line would be the opposite, okay, Dallas to Los Angeles, right? The backhaul, like we're talking about. Look what happened. Look what's happened over the last year. A year ago, at this time, they were, or a year ago, 2019, 2 years ago, they're pretty much at the same exact place, right? When we were operating normally, it wasn't that more expensive to drive from LA to Dallas as it is to Dallas to LA. Makes sense, by the way. It's the same trip down the 10, just going east or west. Well, look at where we are now. Dallas to LA is $1.29 per mile. It's pretty consistent with where it's been. LA to Dallas is 3 times more. It's $3.62, right? And so when John's talking about the death of the backhaul, this is a big piece of it. And it's also, by the way, another reason why trucks and cars have become a bottleneck, rail cars become a bottleneck, because nothing is positioned where it needs to be. For FedEx, for every 3 parcels they have coming out of Los Angeles, Southern California, only 1 is going back in. And so we have these empty trucks all over the place, basically rushing back to LA and Long Beach to pull more stuff out because of the backlogs. And what that does is it takes available capacity off the road everywhere else. Okay. We also get a bunch of empties coming across, not on the truck side, but when you go back to the container, the intermodal side, there's a ton of empty containers coming across the country right now, going east to west, because, okay, well, I want to avoid the traffic jam at Long Beach. I'll go around to New York, New Jersey, Savannah, something like that, drop off there. But also, I'm not waiting for a bunch of empty containers to bring back. And so those empty containers are coming across on railroads and then being, just waiting around until they can get on a boat going out of Los Angeles or Oakland. And so we see this real, messed up sort of positioning for all of our assets that even though, okay, yes, we're short of capacity, we're not even utilizing the capacity we have as optimally as we could because of the mismatch with where demand is coming out. So let's land this plane.
It's funny about this slide, it's like, okay, you can have the best analytics in the world. And I'm like, or you could just talk to me and I'll tell you straight up from an experience point of view, what's happening.
Right, yeah.
And you don't have to pay a subscription.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, John, if you want to toss your cell up at the end of the thing, they could talk to you.
You can wait.
Yeah. All right.
So here's another thing for backhaul that kind of unlocked me. All right. So in Asia, right, they really need certain products from the US. Let's take beef, for instance, right? So if you're using international boxes that are refrigerated, right, I heard this was a great story from a friend of mine. So he's booking backhauls from refrigerated trucks back to the Midwest. And what's happening is the China government releases his box faster because they know that box is going to bring, necessary food back to China. And he's also getting a really good rate because, again, he's using dry goods on a normally, temperature controlled unit. Obviously, there's some things to vet out there if that's the right move for you. Can you use the space? Potential odor issues, whatever, right? But anyway, so he's repositioning that equipment back into the Midwest, where that primary supplier, that equipment is being replaced, right? It's getting to that supplier faster. So the person who's putting their dry freight on there is getting a little bit of a value return on that for a price and service, which is a kind of unique situation. So I was like, kudos to you. I mean, there are wins out there if you're, kicking the bushes and not really disproving anything. But anyway, I just thought
and that's a unique situation with the food, because China, the trade war really did. The trade deficit between the U.S. and China is bigger than it's ever been, and the trade war really backfired in terms of let's get more goods going into China. They have stopped buying a lot of stuff, but we've never bought more things than we have from China. By the way, semiconductors, one of the things that's really holding up supply chains, we still have a tariff on that. So, way to go, everybody. But for food and ag products, specifically beef, like you're talking about, that has been an exception. That's the one thing that's still really going back with a lot of regularity, is sort of agricultural products and any, stuff like that. So for someone in that industry, absolutely, there is some wiggle room in there, right? There is some capacity we can find places, and actually, evidence of that is the exports going out of the Port of Oakland have increased significantly during the fall. If you think about the way a lot of transportation sort of networks work, stuff comes out of the East Coast of China, drops off in LA Long Beach, right? That's our big import port. And then we'll go up to Oakland. And Oakland has traditionally been the biggest export port coming out of the U.S. And there's a lot of, coming down 80 in Nebraska, where you and all your buddies were looking at the corn last week. A lot of that corn flows down I-80. Exactly. A lot of corn flows down I-80, or soybeans or seed, whatever, flows down I-80 and goes out of Oakland. And so you can see, even if you just look at, the Port of Oakland, how busy they've been, you can see evidence that there is still ag stuff moving out to China. So
for you commodity buyers out there, Milo, there was a lot of Milo out there. You may want to look at going short on that.
All right. Stock chips, John.
Don't quote me.
Yeah. Okay. Future predictions. We always ask them, all right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen in the next 12 months with all these metrics? And warehouse capacity and transportation capacity are both predicted to go up at a higher rate than they've been predicted for. They've been predicted to grow out in a long time. Especially warehouse capacity, getting into the 60s, that's now a real rate of growth. Transportation is 56. That's still pretty close to no movement, but it is at least on the positive side. The predictions for these two capacity metrics had been negative for a long time. Now they're both positive, and more positive than they've been in a long time. That being said, we're still in the mid 80s for inventory costs, warehousing prices, transportation prices. Okay, so maybe we've hit the bottom in terms of no capacity. And you would hope, if you think about the way supply chains work, things can start slowing down, at least in the ports, in November and December. Now we're backlogged a lot, so we're not going to slow down as much as we would normally see. But maybe December, January, we'll start to see a little bit of slowdown, start to clear out some of the backlog. And as we start clearing out the backlog, we're also building up capacity. Now, does that mean that, okay, we'll flip into 2022, all our problems will be over? No, actually, I think it's a way better chance it's going to go into 2023. But we're starting to see more physical capacity come back online, but it's not going to be enough. Remember, this is 12 months in the future. So where do we think we're going to be in October 22? It's not going to be quite enough for price growth to stabilize and get back somewhere in the 60s where we would normally like to see it. So essentially, here's what our respondents are telling us. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a very long tunnel. Okay, but we can see, it's like when you're going through the Eisenhower tunnel, you're like, oh, we're almost out. And you're not really ever almost out. You're still like a half mile away, but you're like, oh, at least I can see. I can see where we're going to come out of the other side.
I mean, Zach, I always say there's nothing good about getting older, man. That's pretty relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So plan and staff accordingly, people out there. You heard it here first. Bold predictions 2023.
yeah, yeah. I think that's going to be the year where we start to stabilize a little bit. Would for me, when we'll reach what we consider normal, sort of a normal environment in 2023.
Yeah, a new normal anyway, right? For lack of better words. I wonder if we spent the last decade trying to turn distribution, transportation, supply chain models into these really efficient, just-in-time models. Really with the help of visibility and technology as a big unlocking piece to that. But just the hurdles, right, or our bottlenecks, really had to spend a lot of time scrambling to really unwind those. Go back to your more, regional service centers, maybe smaller warehouse footprints, things like that.
It's, what happened with e-commerce and sort of consumer retail is going to happen with the rest of the supply chain. So if you think about Amazon, right? Think about where their first warehouses were. Very rural areas. The one that I worked in Nevada was in a city called McCarran, Nevada. McCarran, Nevada, halfway between Reno and Fernley. And the only reason you go to McCarran, Nevada is because you work at Amazon or you're in the witness protection program. That's it. There's nothing else going on up there. And they put that there because it was cheap, because it's really efficient. It was right next to the Union Pacific, right next to I-80. You could get into California. It's very, classic economy.
Northwest, one day.
Now think about where they're building warehouses. Like Thornton, like right across the street from two malls. They're putting them in suburbs all over the place. Now, is that a more cost-efficient place to put it? No, it's the opposite. But it allows you to do next-day delivery into Denver, and that's really what they care about, maybe even same-day delivery. We're going to see the same thing.
Right? You put an area where, people can get to work easily with short commutes.
We're going to see something similar happen with the upstream supply chain. Now, some people think, we'll move all the manufacturing back to America. That ain't happening. Okay, we're never going to be making pants again or shirts or toys in the United States. We can't make it 1940 as much as anybody, other people might want that to happen. We can't make it 1940. Here's what we can do though. Okay, what we can do is we can move things closer. Okay, so we see the China plus one policy that was something that was happening before, but now we really see a move towards it. And one of the ideas so what's our backup? How do we diversify the supply chain? Because right now we're like somebody who's just, we've bet it all on red, basically. And when it doesn't come out red, then we have some problems. So we want to sprinkle, sorry, I grew up in Nevada, so I can't help using a gambling metaphor. I want to sprinkle some of this action around, okay? We don't want to just only bet on one thing like some kind of rookie here, okay? What we want to do is diversify. And one of the ways we can diversify is with a Pan-American manufacturing system. The football jerseys, this has already started happening. Nike, the football jerseys for this year, all made in Honduras. Okay, in the past, those all would have been Vietnam. But, Vietnam is having all these COVID issues. And so Nike diversified, put things in Honduras. And we're increasingly seeing investments in Central and South America for manufacturing. The age of the population in Central America is pretty low. They're young over there. Plus, the wage rates would be pretty low. China is not a cheap place to make things anymore the way it used to be. China is very much a middle class nation, which is good, right? Now they're buying more things, more involved in the world. It's good how that area grew. But what that means is manufacturing probably needs to move somewhere else. The idea had been, Vietnam, Malaysia, Bangladesh, places like that. But those are still across the ocean. Those are still a long ways away. And so if we diversify, and again, this is the same thing that we saw Amazon doing. Okay, we're going to put warehouses close to everybody's house, get next day, same day delivery. What if we start building things? What if we move a big piece of supply chain to Central America? Well, now we have a lot of different ways things can get here. It can still come on a boat, and that still would be the cheapest way to get up here. but we can do train, we can do
Plane.
truck, we can do all kinds of different stuff moving up there. Okay. And so it becomes much cheaper. Also, on the other side, having the economy be better in places like Panama, Honduras, that would actually be a great thing for the United States, because then those become potential customers. It helps stem some of the immigration issues that we're seeing at the borders and stuff. So there's all kinds of positive benefits. And this isn't to say that we turn away from China and Asia. This is to say that we expand the portfolio, okay? That we're not just the guy putting it all on the one horse because someone in the bathroom gave us a tip, right? We're spreading it out, and we're using a portfolio approach. Okay.
Yeah,
we also need to use a portfolio approach, not just in where we make things, but how we get things into the country. A pilot that's going on right now at the Port of Long Beach is with the Utah Inland Port Authority, which the idea, by the way, there's a Utah Port Authority is hilarious to me. But with the Utah Inland Port Authority, about some immediate transportation of intermodal containers. So we're not even stopping. It just comes off the boat and it just goes straight to an inland port. People have been trying to push for inland ports in places like Las Vegas or Salt Lake City for years and years and years, and it's never really happened. Well, now we might actually see a little bit of muscle behind this, and some of this actually happen because the systems we have right now, not only where we source from, but then how we move things around within the country, within the United States, has just gotten too stagnant, and it's not diverse or flexible enough to deal with this
efficiency gains by having inland ports in non-busy areas, right? Again, kind of back to your globalization, kind of create jobs and opportunities and new. Look at it. For my vernacular, it's new traffic lanes, right?
Yeah. Well, and it helps us with the backhaul stuff, because now we don't have just everything coming out of one place, right? Now, if suddenly everything for the Intermountain region is coming out of Salt Lake City, now we can move fleets around in a way that we hadn't been able to before, and sort of spread this out in a way that makes more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Not even, it'd be interesting. No one likes to drive across the Continental Divide of the Rocky Mountains, basically now through May, right? So, you could really almost solve that riddle, by exception. You wouldn't really need the fleet to service over I-70 or I-80 in those, kind of unpredictable weather corridors. But I love your concept on globalization, right? Just emerging countries, never before, in the world have we had the opportunity to really explore that, right? And, obviously with technology and visibility tools in the supply chain is really kind of unlocking those potentials out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, we've been talking about this for an hour. This is going from a corner to a whole room, I think. So
got my shovel over here. I've just been digging deep.
I know, there's a lot to talk about.
Digging deep in the supply chain this morning. Happy Monday.
And hey, new LMI reports, they're always posted here. Here's our website, thelmi.com, the-lmi.com. And all the reports, including the new ones, are up there for free, going all the way back 5 years. So if anybody wants to see that, feel free to check those out. Also, you're always welcome to drop me a line at zach.rogers@collegestate. And as John and I were talking about before we started recording, I have like a very nerdy 45 minutes of every day set up to answer emails, so I will try to get to it. And yeah, we'd love to always have some more feedback on this kind of stuff, especially around here in Colorado, the Front Range, and in our general region here.
Yeah, our supply chain culture is just getting stronger every day, thanks to Zach and the professionals that live here. Super excited. Well, thanks again, and thanks to our listeners. Have a great day.
All right.